WEFUNK. We funk.
For me, one of my favorite days of the entire year, as a matter of fact, is in March, and of course, we're talking about St. Patrick's Day, the celebration of Irish culture and its influence across the world. As it really is such a fun day where the entire planet really stops to recognize the fun and the culture of the Irish people, and that little island up in the North Atlantic, and all of the, like I said before, influence it's had on the world in so many ways and so many forms, but really with such a huge impact in the music world. And that's where, of course, here on Big LW's Jammin World podcast, where we will pay our attention to today with our St. Patrick's Day celebration, as we take a look at some of the favorite artists and music to come from the island and be inspired by the island of Ireland. However, we are going to be doing it by way of a little bit of an educational platform, I might say, here on the Big LW's Jammin World podcast, as I am going to personally help guide you on how to make your St. Patrick's Day playlist. Yes. Because, of course, you know, I could just tell you what to play. I could just give you a playlist. Spoiler alert, I'm going to do so. But I could just tell you what to play. However, what's the fun in that, you know what I mean? What's that fishing? It's Irish are a bunch of fishermen. What's that fishing metaphor? I could give you a fish, or you could teach a man to fish. So that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to kind of give you guys a crash course on Irish Music 101 from your boy Big L. Big L! Well, Big LW, anyway. And I'm going to help you out on how to make the perfect playlist for your St. Patrick's Day party. Because let's face the facts, you don't want to be the guy that's sitting there playing Shipping Out to Boston 25 times. You know what I mean? So I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give you some of the do's and don'ts, as well as some of the artists and albums and music and whatnot to highlight in particular. So without further ado, we will kick it off, and I guess we'll just end any suspense. Right off the top, we'll end any suspense. Not that we're going to be going in any particular order here on this little list of mine. However, we will end any kind of suspense in terms of the best Irish song ever. Like, the one definitive classic Irish song is, of course, Whiskey in the Jar by Metallica. And I think that's pretty obvious. I think even the Taoiseach of Ireland himself would proudly claim that Metallica's Whiskey in the Jar is the greatest Irish song ever. But after that, we will start our list here, where we'll kind of go through again some of the big genres and things to look at, as I've kind of broken it up into 10 different categories here. Again, in no particular order, but 10 different categories of what you're going to want to play. But even before we give you what you want to play, I guess we're going to give you some of the things you don't want to play. Before we give you the do's, we're going to give you the don'ts. All right, as a couple of things that you're going to want to stay away from on St. Patrick's Day, but you're not going to want to play any Ed Sheeran, okay? Just because he's a goofy-looking ginger does not necessarily make him Irish, you racist bastards. He's English, all right? And just because he loves singing about Galway and can't shut the fuck up about Ireland doesn't mean that he's Irish. He's English. Same thing goes for Oasis, okay? And I'm looking right at you, Liam Gallagher. But just because you can't get four mixed together without them at some point getting hammered and singing Wonderwall does not make them Irish. They're English as well, so you don't want to play any Ed Sheeran or any Oasis under the English cunt policy, okay? As well, you do not want to play any Enya, Hozier, Sinead O'Connor, Snow Patrol, or The Script, based on the Big LW Jammin World podcast's no whack shit policy. So those are some of the don'ts. Those are some of the things that you don't want to hear on St. Patrick's Day. Some of the things you do want to hear on St. Patrick's Day, of course, fiddles and flutes, harps and tin whistles, banjos and bagpipes, mandolins, violins, accordions, all sorts of guitars, bass, and of course, hilarious stories of the sea and drunken antics on land. So we will get into our first category with all of that. As like I said, we've got our 10 kind of main categories that we're going to want to focus on. The first one here, starting with one of my favorite Irish musical influences, is the subgenre of punk music dedicated strictly to the Irish sound, which is, of course, the Celtic punk movement, which was kind of really popularized in the late 90s, really with the Dropkick Murphys, kind of really had that whole Celtic punk reemergence thing going, as I spoke about a little bit in the first set, rather, in my How Biggie's Death Ended the 90s whole little segment. But I kind of talked a little bit about how after grunge ended, punk really became popular in the late 90s, and there was this subgenre that spun off of Celtic punk, which really mixed traditional punk rock music with, you know, the really aggressive guitar riffs and hard drum and bass lines mixed with all of the kind of traditional Irish instruments that I mentioned just previously, as well as kind of the songs themselves really lended themselves great to punk rock. Lots of tales, like I said, of just like, you know, drunken nights on the town and sing-songy sailor tunes was a really great marriage for punk rock. So that genre kind of really exploded, and like I'd mentioned, with the Dropkick Murphys, who really popularized that, and I joked around about it earlier, but you don't want to be the hack that's playing Shipping Out to Boston, so you're going to want to play some Dropkicks, but you're going to want to stick to the Do or Die album, okay? Go Cadence to Arms, Barroom Heroes, Finnegan's Wake. All right, if you want to get a little later in the career, Rose Tattoo, they put out an album live at Fenway. So, I mean, come on, the Dropkicks live on Fenway Park on St. Patrick's Day. Who's not listening to that? So you're going to want to throw some of that on your St. Patrick's Day playlist. Before the Dropkick Murphys, however, there was Flogging Molly, who was an LA-based band, whereas California kind of was one of the, you know, ground zeros for that post-grunge punk scene. And California really had so many of kind of like the alt-punk bands with Propagandhi and all these other kind of, you know, ska punk and alt-punk bands. One of the predominant ones was Flogging Molly, who really kind of brought that Irish sound to the punk rock scene, and they took up a huge following at a local pub in L.A. where they then changed, like Molly's Pub or something like that, that they eventually changed their name to the Flogging Mollies, and really kind of popularized that Irish sound, of course, with their hit album Drunken Lullabies, with the title song Drunken Lullabies, and really anything off of that Drunken Lullabies album is perfect for your St. Paddy's Day playlist as well. They have a couple cool live albums, a live album from Molly Malone's Pub or Molly's Bar or whatever the actual bar itself is, but they did put out a late 90s live album from the pub, as well as later on in their career in the 2000s, a live album from the Greek Theater. So still paying homage to their LA roots, but they are, like I said, a Los Angeles-based band. However, with the Dublin-born singers, they got a little bit of Irish street cred there, but will definitely hit you over the head with the flute along the way. So great shit there. Along with the Dropkick Murphys and Flogging Molly, another great kind of 90s Celtic punk band was the Real Mackenzies, who are a little bit more wild and aggressive, I'd say, than Flogging Molly and the Dropkicks, but a fucking great band there. So you're going to want to stick with anything off of the Pissed to the Gills album from the Mackenzies. But, however, that's not when the Celtic punk rock scene died in the late 90s, because there's still a lot of bands putting out Celtic punk now, and really kind of one of the foremost contemporary Celtic punk bands, and really one of my favorite all around, is the Rumjacks, who are, I believe, actually an Australian band, but a really, really great traditional Celtic punk sound, and their hit Irish Pub Song really kind of put them on the map. But their rendition of Tell Me Ma, as well as Pot and Kettle, both great songs from the Rumjacks, is really their whole catalog is a perfect St. Patrick's Day sound. So those are kind of where you want to stick to for your Celtic punk, because you're going to want it to sound like St. Patrick's Day. You put on any of those bands, it's going to be sounding like traditional Irish music. However, a little bit more of an edge to it, a little something different, especially with the Rumjacks. You're going to kind of get the, like I said, you're going to get the hip factor where people aren't going to know the Rumjacks. Everybody knows Flog and Molly. They know the drop kicks. They're going to go, who's this? What's this? And you're going to get to look down your nose at them and go, this is the Rumjacks. What have you never heard of the Rumjacks? So you're going to get your cool points in with the Rumjacks. So that's kind of it for the Celtic punk scene. However, if I'm talking Irish punk, I'm going to go to my second genre here, which is the Irish influence on punk, because, of course, the British invasion of punk. Punk is really so synonymous with England, and the British invasion of punk music, of course, with the Clash and the Pistols and whatnot in the late 70s, and really just that wild aggression and that whole crazy scene. But Ireland had their own contributions, and of course any teenage punk rocker has definitely headbanged his way along to the Stiff Little Fingers, who are really one of the more influential punk bands. Definitely, I always kind of looked at them as like the Irish Clash, where they're very aggressive but a little bit more user friendly than some of the other punk bands, but are really just very influential. British invasion era punk scene from Ireland, or the Stiff Little Fingers. So you're going to want to play them at an aggressively loud volume. Another great Irish punk band from that same kind of era, another very influential Irish punk band as well, but the Undertones, of course, their big hit Teenage Kicks is one of the great punk songs from that era. But again, they're kind of just another one of the influential to punk music, and then all of the influence that punk music had on what became rock music and grunge music in the progression of the scene. But the Undertones are another classic as well, another super influential band from Ireland, not as much in the punk scene but kind of more in the hard rock, alt rock scene. But one of the more influential rock bands that you'll come across, and again, not very user-friendly like I mentioned about the Stiff Little Fingers, but My Bloody Valentine, who might not be your favorite band, but they are the favorite band of some of your favorite bands, if you know what I mean, where they're the kind of band that you personally might not enjoy, but Kurt Cobain obviously loved the shit out of, and they've got a super loud and a super aggressive sound that does not necessarily sit well with everybody, and does not exactly sound like St. Patrick's Day. However, their influence on rock music definitely cannot be denied, as My Bloody Valentine is definitely, they're kind of like, a Lou Reed, Velvet Underground-esque kind of thing, where if you ever read a book about any band from the grunge scene, they'll all talk about how much they loved My Bloody Valentine, and then you'll listen to them and you'll go, what the hell is Lane Staley talking about? This band kind of blows. However, obviously they know their stuff. So those right there, those are a couple of very influential Irish bands that people might not be familiar with. A couple of very influential Irish bands that people might very well be familiar with, however, will be our next group, as we'll kind of get into some of the classic crossover successful Irish pop acts. These are some of the biggest, worldwide successful acts out of Ireland, but you're going to want to play some on St. Paddy's Day. And, of course, it starts with kind of the kings of them all, but U2, who at this point are really at this day where we sit in 2019 are probably the single biggest like touring rock band on the planet, kind of with the deteriorating age, of course, of the Stones and whatnot, some of the others, but it really does not get any bigger than U2, especially on the world level, where U2 could like sell out whatever kind of stadium in Uganda or just as easily as they can in Los Angeles, you know what I mean? They're such an amazing band, and they're really, international superstars, and they really have kind of kept a distinctly Irish feel, whereas they don't hit you over the head with any of the traditional Irish instruments, and they really talk more about world plight. They've still stayed very political and have a lot of Irish kind of feels and influences to their music, and of course a lot of songs about the politics of Ireland, and still maintain a distinctly Irish feel, although being really international superstars. So you're gonna want to play some U2 on St. Paddys Day. However, a big don't. Actually, before we go any more further on U2, but a big U2 don't. No Bloody Sunday. All right. This is St. Patrick's Day. This is it's a happy day. Bloody Sunday is, of course, a song of tragedy. Also, nothing to do with St. Patrick's Day. So it would be like playing, like Blue Christmas on the 4th of July. It's just like, what are we bumming ourselves out on the wrong season here? So no Bloody Sunday. As well as stick away from some of the other, U2, U2 bummer songs, With or Without You. You don't want to do that. You're going to want to go Beautiful Day, maybe Desire, perhaps Elevation, live at Slane Castle with fucking 200,000 Irish kids going crazy. So you're going to want to stick with more party U2 songs, all right? Moving along to another great band, and definitely one of the absolute coolest bands of the 90s, and they're definitely kind of part of that 90s alt-rock, not necessarily grunge scene, but of that era. But of course, talking about the Cranberries, who, like I said, are just such a uniquely cool band. They always kind of reminded me, they were like like the Irish Smashing Pumpkins, where they weren't exactly, grunge, but they were just a very cool alternative hard rock band. But of course, with the lovely female lyricist, definitely took on a different sound from the aggression of the rest of that, 90s era. But an amazing band, the Cranberries, so you're definitely going to want to play some Cranberries. However, don't go Zombie, go Linger, or Ode to the Family, Dreams, perhaps. So you're going to want to get some Cranberries in. And as well as U2, they have a distinctly Irish sound, however, not coming through playing the harp and the accordion, you know what I mean? It's got of course, Deidre O'Rourke is that, beautiful Irish sound, and, act brogue to her song, but, so that definitely helps with the Irish sound. However, they don't have the traditional Irish folk sound, but a distinctively Irish feel to the Cranberries, who are amazing, so enjoy them. And I guess that would bring us to another gigantic crossover success from Ireland. However, unlike U2 or the Cranberries, in my opinion, does not really have much of an Irish sound at all. In my book, I always thought that they had a distinctively American sound, and when I found out that they were from Ireland, I was actually shocked. And I'm talking, of course, about Thin Lizzy, who, of course, their big hits, Jailbreak and the Boys Are Back in Town. Those are kind of the big hits you hear on Q104 when you're growing up as a kid in the suburbs in Jersey. And you can't really hear, like, if you hear the Boys Are Back in Town, doesn't sound Irish at all. However, then you go to Dublin, and there are statues in the streets of Dublin, of Phil Lynott, of course, the lead bassist and frontman of Thin Lizzy, who is literally a hero in Dublin. You will not go to Dublin without getting a huge Thin Lizzy influence, with just T-shirts everywhere and whatnot, and the man is beloved. There's a huge wing of him dedicated in the Irish Music Hall of Fame, or Dublin Music Hall of Fame, or whatever it was out there, but such a huge influence and such a huge Thin Lizzy feel in Dublin, who as well is a black Irish, which I don't believe that the Irish have like the politically correct like African Irish. I think they just call them black Irish, so I'm not being a dick. That's what they call them. As well as members of Thin Lizzy, other members of Thin Lizzy were from the north of Ireland, of Protestant descent. So we're talking a band in like the late 70s of guys from the Republic, guys from the North, a black Irish playing American-sounding hits, and yet they were absolutely beloved in Ireland and the rest of the world abroad as well. As Thin Lizzy is another definitively Irish act based upon, you know, their success alone. So a little Thin Lizzy wouldn't hurt on St. Patrick's Day as well, especially if you kind of want to get away from the, if you're looking for a break from the accordion, maybe you play some Thin Lizzy, all right? So those three kind of huge crossover acts I lumped together as one genre. The next couple guys, well, they're getting their own genre all to themselves. As, of course, perhaps my favorite artist from Ireland also achieved much international success as well as here in the States. But, of course, you can't go any further if you're talking Irish music. You can't go any further than Van the Man Morrison, of course, who is just such an amazing catalog of material, such an amazing songwriter, the distinctly amazing rock vocalist, and like I said, just such an immense catalog of material who's still plugging away. I always looked at Van Morrison as the Irish Bob Dylan, and of course Bob Dylan and Van have collaborated many times, and they're both still out touring and both still out putting new music and both still writing songs and being creative and just amazing the world with their artwork. But Van the Man's just catalog of material is absolutely epic, from some of his, you know, more party kind of tunes. Of course, Jackie Wilson, Bright Side of the Road, Gloria. You get the more ballad types with Into the Mystic, or of course, if you're looking to cry alone into a glass of whiskey, anything off the Astral Weeks album would get that done for you, which is probably one of my top 3 favorite albums of all time. But Astral Weeks by Van Morrison, amazing album. Van as well has an entire album with the Chieftains, which is an amazing album. But really, you know, you won't go wrong, especially if you focus on any like Van best hits album, greatest hits album, because like I said, such an immense catalog of material. You'll be safe sticking with anything off of Van the Man Greatest Hits album. As well, you've, of course, got the, I kind of mentioned it earlier with Bloody Sunday, you don't want to cross holidays and get the wrong feel. Of course, The Last Waltz here in the States, synonymous with Thanksgiving, not St. Patrick's Day. However, it does contain Van the Man singing Turalura in the Caravan, so you can't go wrong with that on St. Patrick's Day. But definitely, you're going to want to play some Van Morrison on your St. Patrick's Day playlist. Another guy you're going to want to play on your St. Patrick's Day playlist, who next to Van is perhaps my favorite artist from Ireland, although unlike Van, unfortunately really received no international success or fame, or at least here in the States. I don't want to say no international, because of course he was rather famous in Europe, but really never made it to the States, or you know, further international than that, and never achieved anywhere near the recognition he deserves. But of course, I'm talking about blues guitar god Rory Gallagher, who is really as good as it gets. And anytime anybody is shredding the blues and you don't know who it is, and you ask who's this, the answer is always Rory Gallagher. And the man's the best. I always looked at him as the Irish Eric Clapton, and I always was just as well amazed that just kind of the simple twists of fates in life that, you know, in the UK in that time you have a guy Rory Gallagher and a guy Eric Clapton, and one turns out to be, you know, the greatest ever, and the other turns out to be who? And it's really not necessarily talent that separated them. Rory Gallagher's great downfall, however, was he had a terrible fear of flying, which especially in the late 60s, I should say, 70s, kept him predominantly in the UK, and he eventually died at a early age due to complications of a mixing of alcohol with a high-power sedative that he took in response, or, quote-unquote, in response to his fear of flying. But it's the story they're going with, and I'm happy to stick with it, So that is, anyway, the legend of Rory Gallagher, but that's kind of why, it kind of hampered his success on the international level and kept him as kind of a more local Irish hero, which to me only enhances the glory, because you have to kind of dig a little deeper in the world of blues, and then you come across this guy, Rory Gallagher, and he'll absolutely knock your socks off. Anything off of the Rory Gallagher catalog, you'll absolutely love. If you like the blues, if you like Clapton, you like anything from the Rory G catalog, especially, I'd say, you go to his live works, his Live Europe 72, as well as his Ireland tour of 74. Both of those albums are amazing, of course. Some of the hits, Philby, Tattooed Lady, Bad Penny, Bullfrog Blues, all amazing stuff, and such an amazing artist. And again, one of Ireland's true treasures, however, one that didn't exactly receive much shine outside of the Emerald Isle. So, gonna want to play some Rory Gallagher, and again, look down your nose at anybody that doesn't recognize immediately the blues notes of Rory Gallagher. Fucking throw him out the party. All right, so from there we kind of go. See, one of the things with Rory Gallagher, however, though, being one of Ireland's, treasures. However, he has a definitively blues sound. Does not sound Irish at all. So, if you're going to want to get back to the Irish-sounding music, we've kind of strayed away. We've got into the stiff little fingers and U2 and Rory Gallagher. We're not sounding Irish anymore. So if you want to get back to some of the Irish-sounding stuff, you got to focus on my next genre here, which is kind of the core traditional Irish music bands. All right, and you're going to want to focus on the big three. There's of course a handful more, but if you're gonna want to focus on the core group here of traditional Irish folk music, of traditional Irish folk music, and that traditional Irish sound, you're going to want to focus on the Dubliners, the Irish Rovers, the Chieftains, the Wolf Tones, the Clancy Brothers, and then, if you want something with a little more edge, you go to the Pogues, who really are the definitive St. Patrick's Day band. Gets no better than the Pogues. They're a little bit more contemporary than the others. The other kind of, I guess we'll start kind of chronologically with the Wolf Tones and the Clancy Brothers in the 50s and 60s, kind of really setting the foundation for the Irish folk scene, and very influential. The Clancy Brothers especially have always been cited as Bob Dylan's biggest influence in songwriting. Hello. What an honor there, but to be Bob Dylan's influence in songwriting. That's the Clancy Brothers. The Chieftains, kind of that same era, were a largely instrumental-based band that really are, if you want to sound like St. Patrick's Day, with, like I said, all sorts of harps and mandolins and guitars and stand-up basses thumping away, you're going to want to listen to the Chieftains. Largely instrumental based catalog. They as well kind of do a lot of collaborations featuring other artists, like I mentioned with the Van stuff. But being a largely instrumental based band, they've kind of done a lot of collaborative stuff along the way. The Wolf Tones as well are kind of one of the more traditional foundation, the grandfathers of Irish folk. As well as the Rovers, I'd say, are again kind of one of the more, we're kind of more getting into the grandfather of Irish folk kind of territory. Of course, with their Dublin pub crawl and renditions of Star and County Down, and of course, their hits, they're like really the ones that popularized the. They did that one randomly, as well as another hilarious song, Unicorn, which like set the world on fire in '60. But they're very, you listen to them, it's kind of like listening to, Hank Williams or whatever. Like, it's going to sound that old school and traditional. However, if you're going to want to pick it up a little bit more from there, I'd say you go to the Dubliners, who are, again, kind of a little bit more of a bridge from very traditional Irish folk music to a little bit more rocking Irish folk music. And the Dubliners, really an amazing band with, again, the use of all sorts of traditional Irish instruments, as well as just great sing-songy melodies and lyrics, and as well, kind of all of these bands really trade so much of the catalog being traditional Irish folk songs. It really does have kind of that, 50s American blues feel, where it's Robert Johnson and all these other guys kind of trading the same songs back and forth, and kind of like an eminent domain theory, where it's just, this is, these are the songs people play, so play the shit out of them. And in that theory, they all kind of, share a lot of the same catalog. But of course, the Dubliners, Seven Drunken Nights and, Rocky Road to Dublin, as well as their, rendition of Black Velvet Band and the Irish Rover and a lot of the other Irish classics. They as well had a whole album, Jigs and Hornpipes, Jig Reels and Hornpipes. I believe that is as well like an entirely instrumental Irish music album. So that's definitely going to get it sounding like St. Patrick's Day. As well then, like I mentioned, as the Pogues, who I kind of kicked it off with, saying they really are the godfathers, I'd say, of St. Patrick's Day. And ironically enough, unfortunately, very easily could fall under the English cunt policy, because disappointingly enough, really, they are not. They are actually from England, and they were actually kind of early in their career discovered by Elvis Costello, who helped produce them and took them along. But they're kind of, so they're from the 80s of that era, but they're a great blending of that traditional Irish folk sound with some of the kind of punk rock and more contemporary rock of that era. So it's definitely a little bit more traditional. It's kind of definitely the early foundation of the Celtic punk scene is the Pogues, but still definitely traditional enough sounding that it doesn't really fall in that genre with the hard, rhythm lines. But, like I said, kind of discovered and produced by Elvis Costello throughout the 80s, and they were really becoming a super popular band with lots of hits. However, their lead singer in, truer-than-life fashion, Shane MacGowan, was such an insane, crazy drunk that it led to lots of problems with the band. They ended up actually having to kick him out in Black Sabbath fashion, kicking out Ozzy because he's too crazy. But the Pogues actually had to kick out Shane MacGowan from the band and replace him with Joe Strummer from The Clash, which, as epic as it sounds, it A, didn't last very long, and B, do you know how fucking crazy you gotta be for Joe Strummer to be like the sane B choice that... your behavior has gone to such shit that they're like, hey, dude, who's got that guy from The Clash? Let's get him in here. Maybe he can behave properly for one tour. And that was about all that old Strummer lasted with the Pogues, but a super cool kind of marriage while it lasted anyway with that. But definitely you're going to want to go crazy with the Pogues on St. Paddy's Day. A very diverse selection of St. Patrick's Day music, as well as they've got lots of party drinking anthems, as well as melancholy, depressing songs for after you get into a fight with your friends and find yourself all alone at the bar, wallowing in your misery. After Astral Weeks is finished, you're going to want to play Dirty Old Town and cry the night away to things that could have been in life. But then you rebound and you put on Rum, Sodomy, and The Lash, or If I Should Fall from the Grace of God. Either of those Pogue albums will get you rocking on St. Patrick's Day. And again, just an amazingly distinct and unique Irish sound. And definitely, if you want it sounding like St. Patrick's Day, you put on the Pogues and you let them rock, and you have a good time with that. From there, you stay on the island with another one of Ireland's, kind of in Rory Gallagher style, another one of Ireland's great hidden gems, but an extremely Irish-sounding band and an extremely kind of popular Irish, they were introduced to me as quote unquote the Irish Grateful Dead, which of course piqued my ears. But and of course I'm referring to the Saw Doctors, who the sound is not at all like the Grateful Dead. They're not at all psychedelic. They're not at all jammy. However, they are extremely. They have an extremely cult-like, dedicated fan base that are. I guess the band isn't really like the Irish Dead, but their fans are like the Irish Deadheads, where, they'll all quit their farm, they'll let the sheeps die to go on Saw Doctor tour every summer, and they go fucking apeshit for them in the west of Ireland, but super, super popular on the island, and as well, super, super Irish sound. However, unlike the core group of traditional Irish folk music that I just discussed, the Saw Doctors really have much more of like a contemporary rock sound, just with heavy Irish accents and like goofy names and lyrics that you can barely understand or whatnot. So an extremely Irish sounding band without use of any Irish sounding instruments really. But their hit, I Used to Love Her, is still the all-time #1 chart topper in all of Ireland. So, just to put into a little perspective, their success and fame on the island. But an amazing band, like I said, N17, Downtown, World of Good, To Win Just Once. All amazing songs. Like I said, they're really kind of thought of more as a live band as well. They've got that live performance kind of following, which is where the Grateful Dead parallels came in. So, of course, they have a live album, Live in Galway, which is where they probably proudly represent that region of Ireland in the west of Ireland there. So you play some Saw Doctors, and kind of, again, with the hip factor, not everybody's going to know about them. You're going to get to be the guy that's been like, have you never been to Galway? And make up a lie about some amazing show that you saw him in. So you can pretend like you too are a doctor head or a saw head, and follow them up the west coast of Ireland yourself on Saw Doctor Tour 95. It was a great time. But you're going to want to make up a story about a good doctor show to help out with the street cred there. Right from here, this next little grouping I have is actually some songs that are about Ireland or for Ireland, in honor of Ireland, however, made off the island, all right? So not Irish artists performing Irish songs, because I feel like we've really kind of, at this point, we've really ran the whole gamut of Irish. We've done the folk, we've exposed you to Irish blues, we've talked about the Saw Doctors. It's time to kind of start showing Ireland's influence around, and some of the other international artists that have made Irish songs and Irish music, and we're going to start with a couple here that are from two boys, not from Ireland, but from Liverpool. Famously English, perhaps even more synonymous with their hometown as Thin Lizzy is with Dublin. But of course, talking about the boys from Liverpool, I mean the Beatles. And I'm going to talk about a couple of tracks that are actually from a couple of Beatles that were performed after the Beatles. We're talking post-breakup careers of both John and Paul, who both, of course, the Beatles, especially John Lennon, really never shied away. Was actually, very politically active songwriter, extremely politically active songwriter, and Paul a little bit less so, but of course not afraid to shy away from the big talk either. And both of them wrote beautiful tributes to Ireland in response to the troubles of Northern Ireland in, of course, the late 70s, or in the 70s there. And, of course, I'm talking about John Lennon's Luck of the Irish and Paul McCartney's Give Ireland Back. And both of them, again, like I said, very politically very political at the time, especially from two guys who were so definitively English to be writing songs so totally pro-Ireland at the time was definitely controversial. Also controversial in the sense that probably the one time only, but Paul's song is better. Kind of a shock there, and that's mainly just because John's song has Yoko on it. It's like a John and Yoko song about Ireland, and it's actually probably, however, the single best John song with Yoko. However, that makes it like the last place John song ever. So Paul's song, probably better, definitely a little bit more upbeat anyway, but both of them lovely tributes to Ireland in a time of such conflict and peril for the country as well. It was great to see two of the, as well at that time, really the two biggest rock stars on the world, or Paul and John, showing their support for Ireland. Both of those could be appropriate for St. Patrick's Day, even though Bloody Sunday's not. These ones might be, so go fuck yourself. All right. The next couple, however, that I'm going to get to are We're Straying Away from Irish Tragedy and Sadness. Let's take a deep breath. Okay, we've just played Give Ireland Back by Paul McCartney. It's time to loosen things up a little bit and bring some fun back in this party. It's time to jump around, as they say. So we're going to some House of Pain. Of course, before there was the Dropkick Murphys, there was the original Irish Bostonians bringing the party across the world. But, of course, House of Pain, and if it's St. Patrick's Day, Jump Around is like a year-round appropriate song, but if on St. Patrick's Day... But on St. Patrick's Day, of course, you're going to want to play Shamrocks and Shenanigans by House of Pain. All right. And if we're playing House of Pain, maybe we could also play that hilarious Macklemore song that came out a couple years ago, where he, like, in hilarious Little Dicky fashion, rapped the history of Ireland in a, is it cheesy? Yes. Is it hilarious? Yes. Are we going to play it at some point on St. Patrick's Day? Yes. So Macklemore's rap about Irish history, you're going to want to throw that in there. And I guess at this point, if we're playing House of Pain and Macklemore, you might as well throw in Come On Eileen. Because, let's face it, is it very hack and cliche? Yes. Will it put a smile on everybody's face? Of course. And will they be clapping and singing along to... Yes, of course they will be. And everybody knows the chorus. Come on, Eileen, something, something, something. But they'll all be singing along that first part anyway. So you throw that on at some point, especially to break up the mood, to pick yourselves up after you listen to the Pogues into John Lennon's song about Irish tragedy. You listen to Dexter. You listen to Come On, Eileen, and pick yourself up off the floor. And I guess from there, we will kind of get into this last genre, which is kind of a little mixing of the two, as we've covered all of the great artists on the island. Then we covered some of the great artists not from the island that wrote great original songs about the island. All right, now, this last group that we're going to focus on, last group of songs we're going to focus on here is going to be all of the great cover songs of traditional Irish arrangements performed by American and other, I guess, international artists. But we're talking lots of great cover songs, and I kind of joked around about it at the start of this piece here, that the single greatest Irish song of all time was Metallica's "Whiskey in the Jar," and you know what? I stand by that. Actually, I as hilarious as it sounds and funny as it may be, I defy you to come up with a better fucking Irish song than Metallica's "Whiskey in a Jar." So, but of course, Metallica is not the only performer of "Whiskey in the Jar." The great traditional Irish arrangement has been performed by countless other artists, including all of the great, traditional Irish folk artists that I mentioned earlier, the Rovers and the Dubbers, and all of them as well. Ireland's own Thin Lizzy had a huge hit with "Whiskey in a Jar" in a very kind of rock and roll, definitely very influential. And Metallica's "Whiskey in the Jar" was Thin Lizzy's "Whiskey in the Jar," which was a huge commercial success for Thin Lizzy. Another, however, all-time great "Whiskey in the Jar," and perhaps the Big LW Jammin World Podcast's choice would be a little man named Jerry Garcia, who got together with his great collaborator David Grisham, and they performed an amazing "Whiskey in the Jar" on one of those Garcia Grisham albums, which is definitely very bluegrass, and the more you listen to traditional Irish folk music, the more you just kind of wish you could see Jerry on stage with some of these bands, because it's so suiting to Jerry's super fast, kind of bluegrassy tinged psychedelic rock feel. But Jerry would be an amazing collaborator with the Chieftains or the Dubbers or any of these other Irish bands. It would be so much fun to see Jerry perform with them. As close as we get, however, is the Garcia Grisham "Whiskey in a Jar," which is a classic. The Grateful Dead, in all of my research about it, apparently had never played "Whiskey in the Jar" live. However, the Dead did sound check it twice, so they were close. They were close, but never quite made it onto a Grateful Dead set list. "Whiskey in the Jar." In similar fashion, a song that has, in my knowledge, although I did not do the research, a la "Whiskey in the Jar" by the Dead, but I do not believe that Fish has ever played the traditional arrangement of "Parting Glass," which has become a set staple of the Trey Anastasio solo project. So you can definitely, or solo projects rather, so you could definitely find yourself a gorgeous rendition of Trey on "Parting Glass," as well as a song that's now being popularized by that English cunt Ed Sheeran, who just won't shut the fuck up about Ireland. Jesus Christ. But Ed Sheeran's now got a "Parting Glass" out there, and again, a very popular traditional Irish arrangement is "Parting Glass." Another great cover, what I was going to talk about actually as a great and a shocker to the world, but another song that I was going to talk about as a great Irish cover, but of course Steve Earle's "Galway Girl." However, turns out Steve Earle fucking wrote the song, so probably should have put it in the genre before. However, the fact that it's been kind of popularized by performances through some of those Irish traditional folk acts, and it's really been popularized more by Irish artists and has turned into an Irish staple, was actually written by Steve Earle sans the Dukes. and Steve Earle is actually originally credited with writing the songs. So how about that? If you want to go really traditional Irish songs with a really traditional American sound, you've got Bing Crosby performing an entire album of Irish classics. From Danny Boy to Tooralura. I'm not sure if Come On Eileen made the cut, but it's like a whole classic of, it's a whole album of Bing Crosby doing the classics Irish style. So you could definitely find something to use from the playlist off of that. There's, of course, I mentioned him earlier, but the Chieftains have done so much great collaborative work. Of course, the album with Van the Man, Irish Blood, I think it's called, I forget, but an amazing album with Van the Man, the Chieftains. But the Chieftains have done a lot of collaborative work with, they've done songs with the Rolling Stones, they've done songs with Ziggy Marley, they've done all sorts of great songs, and you can definitely find some super cool covers from the Chieftains of, the Chieftains with American artists doing Irish songs, or the Chieftains with, international artists doing international songs. So a lot of cool stuff there as well. It probably doesn't get much cooler than the Van Morrison Bob Dylan collaboration that I spoke of a little bit earlier in the Van Morrison category. But in this category, it's kind of the more Bob Dylan Irish feel, who as well performs lots of covers Van Morrison himself a lot, but put on that great kind of duet concert with Van Morrison. I think it was some documentary that was being filmed about Dylan on one of his European tours, but there's this great duet concert where it's Bob Dylan and Van Morrison up in the Greek islands performing acoustic performance. They do a couple of Van songs, a couple of Bob songs, and it's absolutely amazing. And Van Morrison himself is, like I talked about, such an amazing artist. But however, his influence on other artists is also unmatched, where almost next to Bob Dylan, there's nobody gets covered as much as Van, it seems, with so many great, renditions. Of course, the Doors do Gloria, and Bruce does Brown Eyed Girl, and and the Allman Brothers would cover Into the Mystic, as well does Phil and Friends, and everybody always covers Into the Mystic. Into the Mystic's a great cover, but Van Morrison responsible, obviously, for so many, for inspiring so many great cover songs, and I'd say with that, my friends, is just about all of the Irish music that you're gonna need to formulate yourself hours and hours of musical enjoyment in celebration for the Irish on St. Patrick's Day. And again, we've covered so much ground here on our St. Patrick's Day playlist, as we've rocked, we've laughed, we've cried, we've headbanged, we've Irish river danced. We've done it all here on our playlist. And again, those are just some of the great artists and songs of Ireland that you're gonna want to check out, and you're gonna want to, like I said, formulate your own playlists with that source of material as well. You can just check them out and enjoy their catalog of material as well. Like I mentioned, a lot of them are great year-round listens, non-St. Paddy's Day catalog. Some of them, let's be honest, listening to the Chieftains when it's not St. Patrick's Day is kind of like listening to Monster Mash in the middle of April. It's just like, what exactly are we doing with our lives? But you should definitely check out some of those artists upon making your playlists as well. Like I actually did give a little bit of a teaser in the first set here, so long ago, but we will, in addition to telling you how to make your playlist, not only did I teach you how to fish, but guess what? I'm going to cook you up a badass fish and serve it to you, as well as we are going to officially debut our first ever Big LW's Jammin' World podcast playlist here on the SoundCloud.
Big F! WEFUNK. We funk.